What's up, people? In this video, I'm going to show you how I built a unique simulator with details I've never seen in any other, made entirely of wood and painted just like a car. Transformed storage into gaming room. Painted red, not ideal. Used cushion filler, LED strips. Built room, delayed simulator due to work. Chose Mosa Racing R for quality. After using kilos of cushion filler, LED strips, and hours, I created this room. However, I avoided building the simulator due to the workload and my desire for quality. Instead of a typical PlayStation steering wheel, we're opting for the professional Mosa Racing R, known for its excellent price-quality ratio. This wheel is unlike those at MediaMarkt, offering numerous setup adjustments. For example, the pedals allow spring adjustments to match our car's feel. And I tell you, this has nothing to do with the steering wheels you find, for example, at MediaMarkt, because this is a wheel that has tons of adjustments when it comes to setting it up. For example, with the pedals, we can add some springs to adjust the stiffness to make it feel as close to our car as possible. I got the spring for the brake to simulate the feel of the pedal when you press it, making it feel more realistic. Another important part of the simulator is which seat to use, and people usually go for a car seat or a racing bucket, but for mine, I'm going to use a gaming chair just like the one I have at my computer. The designs from this brand are some of the prettiest I've ever seen, and it's something that really catches my eye for the simulator because I want it to have a nice aesthetic to look good in the room. The model we're going to use is the same one I have for the computer, but with different finishes. The new chair is completely made of fabric, while the other is entirely made of leatherette. The fact that it is made of fabric is an advantage, since in the summer it will be cooler, and in the simulator, where we will be in motion, we will probably sweat more, so the fact that it is made of fabric is an advantage. Out of all the things that come with the chair, we're only going to use the chair and the wheel, so we're not going to use the armrests or the entire base. And it also comes with a computer mat, just like the one I have, so when I do a giveaway, I'll include it. To start with the simulator, we need to have the chair assembled since we have to measure the distance, so let's put it together. This is really simple since it only takes 2 screws on the sides, and then we just connect the seat part to the backrest. Now we need to make our chair adjustable. For this, we're going to use a seat rail from the Peugeot that we use for racing on the track, which is a super simple and easy to install rail. We're going to remove all the hooks and things from the Peugeot rail that we don't need or that might get in the way. We just want the seat to be able to slide. Once we have the rails clean, we're going to screw them onto the table, making sure they're well aligned so that when we weld, they don't move and stay straight. If they end up crooked, when we try to slide the seat, it will put pressure on it, and we won't be able to move it. Now we need to weld some plates between these tubes that will help us bolt the chair to the rail. Once we have the plates welded, using a piece that comes with the chair to attach the wheel part, we mark and drill the holes, and then we can screw the rail onto the chair. We've managed to make the chair adjustable, and now we can measure the distance we need to create the base for the simulator. Using a Golf R3 seat, calculated chair height, raised with board. Adjust seat distance centered, match wood piece to base size. Now I'm getting in and adjusting the distance from the seat to the pedals, leaving a distance that's roughly centered so it can move closer or further away, so that anyone can assemble it. I took the measurements of the base and the width, and cut a piece of wood the size of the base. Now to raise the seat to the required height, calculate a box that serves as a base and gives strength to the simulator in this part, and holds the chair well so that when we are turning the wheel, drifting for example, it will hold and not move. By the way, I've been making up the entire design of the simulator as I go along, which is why I can't even show a sketch of the idea. Once we have our box, we can screw the seat in, and that way, we can get in properly to do some testing. Determine steering wheel position. Set simulator sides at wheel height. Simulates a mini dashboard for a single-seater. Now we need to calculate the sides of the simulator, and they have to be at the height we want the steering wheel to be, so that it serves as a base. This would be like simulating a dashboard. Well, actually a mini dashboard, since the simulator is a single-seater. Cut side panels. Hollow out areas. Keep sides at seat box height. Cross a board to hold the steering wheel. First, hollow out to the distance where the steering wheel will be, leaving the sides at the height of the seat box to provide support when we screw everything together. After cutting this part, the 2 sides, we're going to cross a board from side to side with a bit of an incline, which will be responsible for holding the steering wheel. Once we have this board screwed in on both sides, we place it in position and check if the steering wheel is at a good height, but I left it a bit low at first, so I added some boards to raise the base of the steering wheel to see what the correct height would be. Since we have some leeway to move this board, we screw it back in higher up, and that's it, leaving the steering wheel at the height we want. Now that we know where the steering wheel is going, we're going to give the sides some style by shaping them. Square top is unattractive, so we're going to remove all the corners and hollow out the bottom part to enter and exit easily. Changes are temporary, and we'll refine them later. The right side stays for future console edition. Temporary changes will be refined. Right side stays, console added for pedal comfort, pedals inclined for ease. And we're going to leave the right side like this for now, because later on, we're going to make a central console at the pedal area to make it more comfortable to step on. We can't leave them flat, so we're going to give them a bit of an incline. For this, we'll calculate a board and place it at a slight angle so that the pedals are tilted a bit towards the driver's side, making them more comfortable to use. We have everything in place now, and we can check that all the distances are right and that it's comfortable to play. Now we're going to make a center console for the handbrake, and just like we did with the steering wheel and the seat, we're going to use the Golf as a reference. We're going to make the console from the part where the steering wheel is all the way to the back. And to make it not completely square, we're going to create a small flat base that will be for the handbrake and the gear shift. And from that base back, we're going to give it a bit of a slope down to the level of the seat. By the way, all the wood you see me cutting, I do it myself in the workshop. Carpentry is something I really enjoy. And when I set up the workshop, I got several machines to be able to do all this kind of work. That's why I thought the best option for making the simulator was wood. For the sloped part, to keep it simple without dealing with screws or making miter cuts, we're going to cover the board with 3mm wood and glue it on. And since this doesn't have to bear any weight or pressure, it fits perfectly. Now we're going to keep reinforcing parts of the steering wheel area. For the part right above the support, we put a board from end to end and make the cutout for the motor area. Since this has to withstand a bit of force, we're making another board to reinforce the front part. Shape board, leave 3mm step, finalize side. We're not going to screw this board down to the edge. We're going to leave a slightly 3mm step for something you'll see later. If you remember before, I said that the side was something provisional, and after giving it several turns I saw what shape to give it. To start, we're going to round off this corner here to smooth out this part. We're rounding the corner and carving the side. For the pedal area, we'll add a board for reinforcement. With the simulator ready, we'll assemble it. In the pedal area, we are adding reinforcement by placing a board at the right height to avoid obstruction when stepping on it. Now that we have the simulator 100% complete with all the parts we need to make, we are excited to announce that we're going to put it all together, which is a significant milestone in our project, since we have the seat drawer loose and all the sides of the base loose, because the whole simulator is one piece. This step is crucial for the overall functionality, and we need to ensure everything fits perfectly, making sure that every component is aligned and secured properly. Now we're going to install the chair wheels on the wooden base. We place the base upside down and measure to put the wheels in the corner, and with a drill, we make the hole. Here I messed up and used a drill bit that was too big. No perfect drill bit, use smaller one, hammered wheel, fits tight, stable, 2 front wheels, 3 back for weight. This is actually better as the wheel fits in more tightly and doesn't move. And since the chair came with 5 wheels, I put 2 on the front and 3 on the part of the chair, which is where the most weight is going to be, where we sit. As you can see, the wheels work perfectly with the base, and we won't have any weight issues since we won't be moving around once we're using the steering wheel. To attach the center console to the base of the simulator, I made a small L-shaped piece of wood to act like a little wedge so that this part fits with the other one. This L-shaped piece will be screwed to the simulator part, leaving just the right space for the center console. This way the console fits perfectly, but if we want to take it out, we can do so without any problem. I wanted to make this part removable in case we need to transport the simulator to a place that's not so wide. And since this part can be removed so quickly, it is very easy to remove, and so that it stays tight and doesn't move, we put a screw with a wing nut on it, and so if we want to remove it by hand, we don't need any special tools. To cover the steering wheel area, we use 3mm wood to hide odd spots. Once everything is glued and assembled, we sand the edges to make them smooth and rounded, which helps prevent damage. For parts cut with a jigsaw, we use an 80 grit sanding block. After smoothing the wood, we apply putty to fill in screws and any imperfections. This ensures a polished finish and protects against future damage. And all the parts we've cut with the jigsaw, we level them with a sanding block using 80 grit sandpaper. Now that we've smoothed out all the wood, we need to grab some putty and fill in all the screws and any imperfections we have. For this, we can use any type of putty. In my case, I didn't have any regular polyester putty left, so I was using aluminum putty, but I'm telling you, it's going to work just the same and will end up looking exactly the same. Once the putty has dried well, we take the sanding block or the sander and smooth everything out nicely and level it. As you can see, the simulator is starting to take shape, and now we're going to add some aesthetic touches to make it look nicer. And for that, we're going to use the new laser engraver I got from Acme, which is the most powerful one I've had so far. As you know, I have had a lot of lasers, but I have never had any like this one, since this one has 30 watts and the most powerful one I ever had from the other one had 20. The only thing missing in this type of laser is the size, and if it were a little bigger, you could actually do a lot more things. The first thing that occurred to me to decorate the simulator was to put the logo of the steering wheel brand on the front, and on the large side to put the logo of the chair brand with the Viking helmet part. First, measure the logo and adjust the size in the software, cutting the logo with a well-fitted frame. As I mentioned, this laser is one of the most powerful I've had. Sometimes the wood almost catches fire. Remember, if you get any kind of machine like this, never leave it unsupervised while engraving. There are moments when I can feel the wood wanting to catch fire, and for this, the laser has a call sensor. But I'm saying, if you get any kind of machine like this, never leave it engraving alone without supervision. The sensor detects if there's a fire and shuts down the machine, but it doesn't put out the fire, so I really don't recommend leaving it engraving alone. Now that we have our logo cut out, we'll square it in place. And now we're going to do something, which is to paint the base where the logo will go, since we're going to use it as a reference for what we're about to do. If you remember, we sanded this wood down to 3mm, and I thought it would be cool to cut out some hexagons with links in wood to stick them around here and frame the whole logo area. In the engraving program, we can design hexagons to any size and copy and paste what we want to cut. After cutting, too many looked cluttered. The best option was a few on the sides in varying sizes from large to small. I'll paint these hexagons the same color as the simulator, and after thinking a lot about how I could arrange them, I realized that the best option was to put just a few on the sides and make them in different sizes, from bigger to smaller. I'm going to paint these hexagons the same color as the simulator, so I'll stick them directly onto the wood, and when we paint the simulator, we'll paint them too, also. As I mentioned before, we're going to put the logo of the chair brand on the side. So just like we did with the simulator brand logo, we measure it, set the size we want, and let the laser cut it out. This has a ton of small pieces, but we can't lose any since we're going to give them the original colors of the logo. Since I had a bunch of hexagons left over, I centered the logo and made a line at the bottom with the hexagons to decorate that whole area a bit. To decorate the console, I printed a nitrous bottle with a 3D printer, found a realistic design online, measured the console, and it fit perfectly, separated the regulator part for support. On a website where you can download free designs, I found this bottle that looked a lot like the real one. So I took the measurements of the central console to see how the bottle would fit, and it fit perfectly in the printer. The regulator part was attached to the bottle, but I separated it because that part needs support, and doing it with the bottle would have been pretty complicated. Once we have the designs created for our printer, we hit play, spray a little lacquer, and wait. The printing time for the bottle was 16 hours, which is actually normal since it's huge. Since it was so big, I set a pretty high speed because I didn't really care about the quality, and I only used 3% infill to avoid wasting material and to make it take less time. Here I made a mistake and didn't realize that the design wasn't a perfect circle. It had little corners all around the circumference of the bottle. But well, since it was pretty big, you'll see later how we fixed this. And now we just need to print the regulator part, which takes quite a bit less time. It only took a couple of hours. The thing is, I didn't record part of the process because I went home. And when I came back, it was already printed. We had to print this part with support, so I removed it from the bottle and printed it separately because those supports would have stuck to the bottle and then it would show. The next step, we're moving to the painting booth, where we're going to spray primer on all the pieces, including the nitrous oxide bottle. Painting raw wood needs primer to stop absorption and fill pores. Ensure all pores are covered to avoid touch-ups. Prime the regulator and bottle heavily for sanding. It doesn't matter if we load up some areas a lot or if it drips a bit. That's totally fine because we're going to sand it down later and level everything out. But it's better to make sure all the pores are well covered than to have to go back and touch up the primer later. We also give the regulator a good amount of primer, and we can definitely apply 4 or 5 heavy coats to the bottle to create a nice thick layer that we can sand down and shape the bottle round. After applying the primer and letting it dry, as you can see, there are a lot of little dots and those dry powders that stuck to the paint, a bunch of drips or areas that aren't quite right, but I'm telling you, it's absolutely fine because now we're going to grab some sandpaper and smooth out all those parts, and it's super easy since the primer sands down really well. Use 400 grit sandpaper carefully. Avoid rounding edges or removing primer. Touch up if needed. Sand bottle to smooth and round it. If we take off some of the primer, it's not a big deal because we can touch it up later. And to sand the bottle, we start smoothing everything out with the same 400 grit sandpaper, rounding the bottle as much as we can to make it look perfect. We're putting all the pieces back inside the painting booth, and now we're going to touch up the areas where I went a bit overboard with the sanders and took off all the primer. Here we're going to do it very gently since we just want to cover those areas a bit, and there's no need to load it up too much or anything. And then to sand it, we can use the same sanding sponge to smooth it out a bit. Once we've finished touching up these parts, we clean everything well with a silicone-free degreaser and we can start painting. To paint the base color, we're not going to complicate things and we're going to use matte spray paint. With the spray, we do exactly the same as if we were using a gun. We apply a light first coat and let it dry a bit so it has a base for the second coat, which we can apply a bit heavier. I'm going to give you a tip for when you're spray painting. It doesn't matter if you're applying a light coat, painting a small piece, or touching up an area. Whenever you need to spray paint, press the nozzle down as hard as you can so the paint comes out as finely misted as possible and with maximum pressure. If you don't press it enough, you risk the paint coming out in thick drops, which can ruin the piece. To paint the bottle, we're going to use electric blue and we're going to start by painting the top part. Once this part dries a bit, we're going to flip the bottle over and paint the rest, including the bottom part. To paint the regulator, we're going to use a silver spray to cover the entire bottom part of the regulator and the nozzle. Once the silver dries, we're going to tape it up well and paint it with the same electric blue from the bottle. Now we're going to apply varnish to all the pieces, but we won't just spray the varnish as it is. We're going to add a bit of pearlescent silver paint to make the white and blue from the bottle have a pearlescent finish. I took the letters we made for the simulator, painted them black and put them in the paint booth. I sprayed them with the same varnish mixed with pearlescent silver to turn them into metallic black. I've given all the pieces 2 good coats of varnish, and as you can see with the flash, the pearlescent effect shows up nicely. We've turned the matte Montana white into pearlescent white. And here in the bottle, the blue, as you can see, stands out a lot more. We can now take all the pieces out and we're going to start sticking on the logos we made. As you saw, we made a small frame for the simulator brand logo so we could align it more easily later. All we have to do is align the frame in its place and stick the letters on. Once the letters are stuck on and dry, we can remove the frame and everything will be nicely aligned. For the logo of the chair brand, we're going to give everything a coat of black, even though some pieces won't be black. It doesn't matter since we're going to use this as a primer. Then, for the parts that are going to be colored, we're going to give them a couple of coats of white paint so that the color sticks well later. As you can see, the logo has black, turquoise, and pink parts. And what we're going to do is separate those parts to paint each one its color. To paint this, we are going to do it with the airbrush and with a paint kit that I have for this. For the pink, we're going to use the pink tone that comes with the colors here. I didn't realize and I was recording the whole time out of focus because I got too close to the camera and the phone just doesn't focus well. For the turquoise color, since the colors didn't have it, I used a little bit of blue, a little bit of yellow, and a little bit of white until I found the tone that was most similar to the logo. When all the pieces are extremely meticulously and precisely painted, we take the large part and start carefully and securely fitting them in from the back, adding a little glue so they don't fall off. It's similar to doing a puzzle because I have to keep checking where each piece goes, since all the pieces are glued in their place. We flip the piece over and see the result. And as you can see, the color turned out very similar to the original logo. In my opinion, it needed a bit more varnish. The letters. I saw a logo where part of it had a pink gradient, and it caught my attention. So I did the same for this one. And then we just need to stick it on the simulator part. The first thing we do is put the frame in place to serve as a base. And then when we have the pieces glued on, we remove the frame and the logo will be in its spot. Here at the front part of the feet, it looked pretty plain. So I thought about putting the logo of Assetto Corsa, which is a car simulation game, one of the ones we're going to play with the simulator, to make this logo exactly like the other one. And to paint it, well, the colors I have in spray, I use spray paint, and the ones I don't have in spray, I use the airbrush. For the floor part of the simulator, we're going to use carpet, which is going to look a lot more interesting than if we had just painted it. To put it on, we take a piece that's a bit larger than the area we want to upholster, and on the simulator part, we use contact glue and a brush to apply glue all over the floor. For the carpet part, we apply the glue with the gun, which is much faster. Once we apply the glue, we let it dry a bit, and then we can stick it directly onto the floor of the simulator. What we do is take advantage of the edge that's cut straight to make a part of the simulator, and for the other side, we leave the excess, and then we trim it with a cutter to make it flush with the wood. Now we can assemble the pedals, and they have a cable that goes to the steering wheel, so we're going to put a piece of cable cover to hide it and make it look nicer. We're also going to assemble the steering wheel so we can put the rest of the cables in place. To screw the steering wheel tightly to the wooden base with the support it came with for mounting on the desk, we make a bracket, and that way, it gets screwed in much more securely. Now we put another piece of cable cover up to the steering wheel and connect the rest of the wiring. The steering wheel has a USB cable that goes to the computer, a power cable, and another one that goes to the pedals. We can now properly mount the seat and screw it into place. And we're also going to mount the nitrous oxide bottle. To secure the bottle to the base, I designed some clamps with holes to screw it down and hold the bottle in place, since they're really secured. I also thought about adding some LEDs to the base to light up the foot area and the floor. I put a strip above the feet and another just below the steering wheel part. And to light up the floor area through the hole that ended up being too big for the wheel, I ran the cable down to the pedals and added a whole LED strip around the base on the floor. Yusen. For connecting the cables, join them all together and solder them and protect them with heat shrink. And then I used double-sided tape to stick it to the wall of the simulator and did a test to see if they light up properly. I left the control unit accessible so I can reach it, although we can also turn them on with Alexa. The left side looked a bit plain without anything, so I came up with a design of a tire tread to put all along the bottom. And I also came up with a CK sound letter to complete this part a bit. One thing that looked a bit plain was the base of the seat, so I made a cover with 3mm wood and painted it black to cover that part a bit and make it look more interesting. One thing I hadn't shown throughout the video, and that's because I didn't have it yet, was the handbrake. The switch to a 7-speed manual shifter, and the handbrake can be set to conventional or drift style. We're going to set the handbrake to drift style, which I like more. I was a bit nervous here because I made the center console a bit by eye without knowing the measurements of these two pieces, but luckily everything fit perfectly. To attach these pieces to the wood, we make a hole, pass a screw through, and put a nut on the other side with a washer to tighten it well against the wood and hold it securely. Now to pass the cable, it seemed a bit ugly to me that it was hanging outside, so I thought of putting it in the central console and passing it through the front. So to make it look nicer, I designed some D-shaped pass-throughs so that the hole wouldn't be left exposed. All these things in the video you're seeing in just a few minutes, but I've spent over a week working on the simulator day and night for all these details. I hope YouTube behaves and shows the video to my subscribers at least. To run the cables through the front, we make a hole with a hole saw and put a desk grommet in the front. I made the hole big enough so that when the simulator isn't in use, the cables can be hidden inside and everything stays tidy. We're going to add another detail to the nitro bottle to make it look more realistic. We're going to put a piece of tubing connected to the regulator and to the wooden base. To make the wooden base look good, we're going to create a small fitting to connect the tubing here. To install the fitting, we just need to make a hole in the wood and put it in. And now just push the tubing in here tightly since I made this to the exact measurement and glue it in the hole of the tubing. And the most important detail of all is putting the sticker on the nitro bottle.
Take me back to a place where I felt at home. Take me back to a day when we were...
Guys, we finally have the simulator finished and indeed ready to connect to the PC and play. Later on we'll add some more details, but for now I don't want to overload it, so we'll take it step by step.
Back to a day when we weren't alone. Take me back to an age when the world felt small. Way back before we blew it all. Too many things going on, I can't keep track of them all. From people dropping a bomb to people putting up walls. I feel like life is on hold, perception stuck in a vault. I know that time can...
Now that you've seen how it turned out, we can put it in our room. And to put it on the computer, we just need to remove the chair. And in case you haven't seen it, I have a height adjustable desk, so we raise it a bit and slide the simulator underneath.
Aside, we'll all just fight till we die. Is this an argument or just the start of it? Either way, I don't...
Then we just have to lower the desk to the height of the simulator and it will be in its place.
Can't be picking up the pieces, fixing scars from this. Is this an argument or just the start of it? I wanna drive away so I can...
To connect it, we need to plug the simulator into the power. We have to connect the steering wheel via USB, and we also have a separate USB for the shifter and the handbrake. Alexa, turn on the simulator. Even though the monitor setup I have for the simulator is really bad, we can bring it a bit closer, but still, it's not ideal. Now I'll tell you what I have in mind to improve all of this. Once we have everything connected in the steering wheel app, we have a ton of settings and calibrations for each type of component. We can change how the potentiometers work, the steering wheel's rotation degrees, stiffness, a ton of things. Playing with the simulator, the little I've tried, is amazing. But it's also the most complicated thing I've tried. I've played a lot of car games, but with the PlayStation controller, but I can tell you that this has nothing to do with it in any way. The simple thing, for example, that doing drills in Need for Speed with the controller here becomes hours of training to know how to control the car,